Okay, 5A, and indeed 5B. Yeah, they're not for the faint of heart. This one is explain using a diagram why some economists argue that the long run Phillips curve is vertical, but the short run Phillips curve isn't. So if you're a Phillips curve aficionado, then this one works well for you, I think. I think the sensible way of doing it is actually to take these two things separately. Yeah, and to initially talk about the short run Phillips curve, which is kind of the easy one. So the short run Phillips curve simply says that if we decrease unemployment, then inflation increases. And that sounds obvious, but a lot of people don't understand why that is. So what people fail to understand on this one is the direction of causation, which is the way that I just explained it. Yeah, that it's the fall in unemployment that is causing the increase in inflation, not the other way around. So what we're normally saying is that a decrease in unemployment is generally associated with an increase in aggregate demand. Either the aggregate demand reduced unemployment itself, or as unemployment falls, people have more income that they spend. As a result of that increase in aggregate demand, the economy moves closer to full employment, or it moves closer to the NAIRU or below the NAIRU, and as a result, that creates inflationary pressure. And it's probably wise whenever you're talking about inflation, to explain why rising demand does create inflationary pressure. And going back to the idea of just thinking about a single business, as demand rises, there are two pressures on the business. Firstly, workers are likely to want higher wages, because they realise that they're in a strong bargaining position. Unemployment's low, new businesses are opening up that they could go and work for. That increases firms' costs. And secondly, there's simply less competition between businesses. When demand is high, there's lots and lots of customers. You don't have to fight so hard for them, and that makes it easier to increase prices. So, making sure that you're clear about why inflation is likely to rise, is going to make sense. And then just making sure that you refer to your diagram, kind of say as unemployment falls from U1 to U2, inflation is pushed up from I1 to I2, meaning the Phillips curve isn't vertical. The vertical Phillips curve, there are many, many, many different explanations of the vertical Phillips curve. I'll give you my one. You may know another one. As long as you're clear, it doesn't really matter. But my one involves understanding the idea of the NAIRU. And the NAIRU is the level of unemployment at which the power of firms and workers is balanced. Let's suppose that we're initially here, with inflation 3%, unemployment's at the NAIRU, let's suppose that's 6%. Let's suppose the government decides that what it's going to do is to increase aggregate demand, and unemployment falls to, say, 4%. As a result of that, workers are now relatively powerful. Workers have an edge over firms, and they can force through a real wage increase. So what's going to happen is they know that inflation is 3%. They have inflationary expectations of 3%. They may be able to force through a 2% real pay increase. And to get 2% in real terms, they'll have to ask for 5% in nominal terms, because then they'll get 5% pay rise, prices rise by 3%, so they'll be 2% better off. But of course, if all the workers in the economy are getting a 5% pay rise, that's actually going to cause 5% inflation. Firms' costs rise by 5%, and they'll pass it on to consumers. And that's our short-run Phillips curve, like that. But what Friedman, who kind of came up with the expectations augmented Phillips curve, argued is that B isn't a sustainable point. It's not stable. And the reason is that after initially workers are happy, they suffer from what's called money illusion. They kind of go, oh great, I've got 5% more money, aren't I rich? It's all lovely. They haven't realised that prices have actually gone up as well. At some point, they are going to realise that prices are going to rise. At that point, they'll kind of go, well, I've been tricked. I've got a 5% pay rise, but inflation's 5%. I haven't gained in real terms. At that stage, they'll say, well, right, if inflation's 5%, to get my 2% pay rise, I'm now going to have to ask for 7%. And when they realise it's 7%, when they realise that inflation's risen to 7%, they'll ask for 9%. So what starts to happen is that inflation starts to accelerate. Hence, that's the non-accelerating inflation rate of unemployment. Once you're below it, inflation starts to accelerate. So we're going to get, obviously, it's going to get a bit boring. So we'll kind of say, suppose the process stops. We know that the economy is going to self-stabilise back towards the narrow because this is kind of neoclassical model. So eventually, the economy does self-stabilise, but along the new Phillips curve, with higher inflationary expectations. And so now when we return to the narrow, we don't return with inflation of 3%, we return with, say, inflation of 7%. So in the long run, what's happened is the economy has returned to the narrow, but inflation is much higher. So the long run Phillips curve, according to proponents of this view, is vertical, because in the long run we've simply gone from A to B to C to D to E. In the long run, all that's happened is we're at the same level of unemployment, but with higher inflation.